when she hits you with the "I'm in a relationship" at Luke Kennard 5.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by Draft.com. Use the promo code LOFANTASY to get yourself a free entry into a draft with your first deposit. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. We've got lots to talk about. We had the news on Blake Griffin's injury. There are 5 games from Tuesday to break down. There are 10 games for Wednesday to preview. So,
let's get to it.
Let's get to it indeed. We will start with the Blake Griffin injury news. He has got a strain of the MCL, or sprain of the MCL. He will be out for up to 8 weeks. So you're looking at 2 months there. Maybe he's back in 6, maybe he's back in 8. I would lean towards the 8 weeks there for an MCL sprain for Blakey Griffin. In terms of who's going to benefit, well, I guess it depends a little bit on when the Rooster comes back, because when Danilo Gallinari comes back, I think he starts at the 4, Wes Johnson remains at the 3. So Johnson's a guy that I think should be owned in most cases. Now, Gallo, we know he's a slow healer, and he's probably out another week or so here. So in the meantime, they're going to have to find someone to start alongside Wes Johnson. I think Sammy Dekker or the table, Montrezl Harrell, will be the 2 major beneficiaries. Will either of those guys be 12-team league players? I think that Harrell would need to get 26 minutes a night, and Dekker would need to get 30 minutes a night to be that guy. And I'm not sure that they get those minutes on a regular basis. If I'm going to add anyone, I would probably add Dekker. I think he is the better player. But neither of those guys, for what might end up being a week while we wait for Gallinari to come back, neither of those guys become must-own type of players. Willie Reed, maybe, but he hasn't played a single second next to DeAndre Jordan this season, so I'm not sure he's going to benefit. But last year when Blake Griffin went down, Mo Spates hadn't played a single second next to DeAndre Jordan, and then he began to do that when Griffin went out. So Doc has had a history of doing that, but with Harrell and Dekker both options there, and maybe they dust off Bryce Johnson, there's going to be just a mix of players who fill in Blake Griffin's role. As for what you do with Griffin, well, that's an individual decision, and it depends on how you're sitting. Are you sitting strongly? If you've got IR, you put him there. Are you in the middle of the pack and you don't have an IR? Then it's going to be hard to hold on to zeros for 2 months, because you will almost invariably slide down, and you may have to bite the bullet and just drop him. Does your league have a games limit for the week? Because if you've got a games limit during the week, you can often hold a 0 guy on your bench, because there'll be times when you have to make decisions. Who do I have to sit out to get myself under the games limit? So it is clearly a very individual decision as to whether you drop Blake. It depends on the rest of your roster, where you fit in the standings, who you'd be adding off the waiver wire. So many different factors involved in that. But at least the injury for Griffin is not a season ender. He's going to be out until some point in January, and it'll be sort of filled by committee with the Rooster. If he's available, add him. Of course, he has been dropped by some in some leagues, and Wes Johnson is the other guy to add, with Dekker and Harrell filling in the interim. That's just how I see it. We haven't heard Doc Rivers give confirmation on that yet, though. Let's talk about the monstrous line of the night. It is also the young gun of the night, and it goes to a player who I've been fairly critical of, and that is Chris Dunn of the Chicago Bulls. Dunny had 24 points with 4 rebounds, 8 assists, but he hit 4 triples, he had 4 steals, he had a block, and he was a very, very impressive 10 of 16 from the field. Now, that sort of shooting is not something that we should expect from Dunn all the time. He is shooting just 41% from the field this year. That's an improvement on the 38% he was at last year. His true shooting last year was 43. It's up to 47, so it's still horrendously below league average, but it's not as poor as what it was last season. 75% from the line is a big increase on the 61% that he shot last season. 42% from 3 is a big increase on the 29% from 3 that he shot last season. And he is the 71st ranked player this season in only 27 minutes a night. But prior to this game, Chris Dunn had combined for 8 points in his previous 2 games. And like I've said before, I imagine this Chicago Bulls point guard situation is going to just go up and down and fluctuate continually. And that's the history we've got from Fred Hoiberg. He did it last season. He's doing it here. In these last 2 games, Jaren Grant played more than Chris Dunn. He played better than Chris Dunn. Dunn played better in this one and got some extra run. And that could be an ongoing theme for this Bulls team. Dunn is still a player that you need to own. His combination of assists and steals on their own is worth owning. He is averaging only 4 assists and 2 steals, but that could easily pump up to 5.5 and those 2 steals and get those 3-point numbers up there as well. And if he does keep this improved efficiency going, that is going to solidify him as a top 100 player this season. I believe he is a must-own guy, and you would clearly own him over Jaren Grant. Just because he's a must-own player doesn't mean that I think he's a good player, because this Chicago Bulls team is horrendous. But I would own him over guys such as Rajon Rondo, who is owned and he's been a disaster this season. I would own him over guys like TJ McConnell. I would own him over guys like Timmy Frazier pretty clearly, and Tyus Jones if you added him. Dunn is the guy that you want to own there, because he does have pretty consistent or relatively predictable, I guess, season-long value, even if from game to game there'll be some Hoiberg madness that does piss us off no end, which is a Hoiberg speciality as we've seen throughout his tenure coaching the Bulls. Now it's time to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is the fabulous folks over at Draft. Did you know that your chances of winning on Draft are 80% better than on salary cap sites? That's why Draft is my new favorite fantasy site. No more getting crushed by the pros. It's not just me, more than 1 million people that have already downloaded Draft to play in a real live NBA draft right now and be done in under 5 minutes and get paid out the next day. Drafts are filling every second, so you can join one whenever you want. All new players get a free entry into a real money draft when you make your first deposit, but you have to use my promo code, and that is LOFANTASY. That's right, play in a real money draft for free just by using my promo code LOFANTASY with your first deposit. But it gets even better than that. Draft is so sure you'll love it that they're even offering Locked On Fantasy Basketball listeners a money-back guarantee of up to $100. Just search Draft in your app store or go to draft.com and come play for free right now with promo code LOFANTASY, and make sure you are checking out the Locked On Leagues in the lobby and play against other Locked On listeners and other Locked On Podcast Network co-hosts. So go check out Draft and use that promo code LOFANTASY. It tells them that you came from us, and it gives you that free entry into a cash contest with your first deposit. The waiver wire line of the night, also a young player, and that is Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat. 19 points for Bam, 6 rebounds, 2 assists and a block. He was a perfect 7 of 7 from the field and a perfect 5 of 5 from the free throw line. He got into the game because Hassan Whiteside was getting cooked by Kevin Love and he's dealing with a knee issue. And then Kelly Olynyk came in and he got 3 fouls in about 5 minutes. So Adebayo came in and he looked really impressive in that sort of a playing time. Although that sort of playing time that he got, will he be able to get any sort of playing time moving forward? Well, this performance makes you think that maybe he will. But again, he is the third string center on this team. So him getting regular playing time might be tough. He has been a player who has impressed me more than I thought he would. And that's something I probably, anyone coming out of Kentucky pretty much does that, with the exception of Andrew Harrison. They tend to show more than what they've been able to do at Kentucky. So what do you do with Adebayo? Well, you don't go and add him really in any leagues this season unless you're in a 30-team league. He does have Whiteside and Olynyk to go through before he gets regular minutes. But for Dynasty, he's showing a proclivity to block shots. He can score. He can get some rebounds. He does have some value. I wouldn't think that he's ever going to have a top 50 season. Or probably, he might even struggle to be a top 100 guy. But I think he can be a serviceable 20 to 23 minute a night backup or in a center-type platoon. And that gives him a decent shot at top 150 value at some point. He just doesn't have anything that's overly spectacular for his game for fantasy, and that does limit his overall upside. The dud of the night. That is Goran Dragic, the iron shoulder of the Miami Heat. 7-2-4 for Dragic. He had a steal. He was 1 of 5 from the field and 5 of 8 from the free throw line. I wouldn't be worried too much about this. His previous 3 games, he'd scored over 20 points and he'd hit 11 threes in those 3 games with 3 steals. It was a game where he only played 23 minutes. He got very early foul trouble, which is something that does piss me off a lot. He had 2 fouls early and then sat and didn't get another foul for the rest of the game. Just let these blokes play through the foul trouble. It's a really maddening sort of thing that these coaches do. Let them play through it. You got 6 fouls for a reason. So you could have been out there and playing his 34 minutes a night. Now, not that it really would have mattered because they got smacked by the Cavs, but he didn't get any more fouls. So you're missing out on 7 to 10 minutes of the iron shoulder, which could have at least kept the Heat relatively competitive, especially given the way that he played in the games leading up to this one. So nothing to be too concerned about. He is the 58th ranked player this season. He's going to be around that 45 to 60 mark for majority of the year, averaging 19, 4 and 4.5. So his assists are quite a bit down on what they were last season. A steal a game, 2 threes a game, really good efficiency, 58% true shooting. He is what he is, and that's a really solid player. It just obviously wasn't the greatest of nights for the Iron Shoulder in this matchup against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I'm going to talk about all these 5 games now in more detail, and then later on in the show, we're going to look ahead and preview all 10 games for Wednesday, so make sure you are sticking around and tuning in for that. Let's look at these games now in more detail across the NBA landscape for Tuesday. The first one is the Miami Heat taking on the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Joshy Richardson, not the Joshy Richardson, just Josh Richardson. He showed some signs of life. 15, 2 and 2 with 3 triples and a steal. So the other numbers weren't quite as good as they've been in other times, but he hit his shot. 6 of 9 from the field for 15 points. You know that I still believe in Josh Richardson. His minutes aren't going anywhere. And you can say, Josh, he only played 27. And yes, but this game was an absolute blowout. So I'm not overly concerned by the level of playing time that he saw here. And the shots fell. And like I talked about yesterday, his complete ineptitude in shooting wasn't going to continue at that level, and it would turn around. I still do believe that he is a 12-team league guy, but I preach patience probably more than most fantasy owners can deal with, and I'm willing to hold on to him, and I'd be okay with looking at him in a 12-team league, because again, the shots fall and the line just turns around completely. Whiteside only played 19 minutes in this game. Knee issue, toasted by Love, but still 11 and 14 with 2 steals and a block is not a bad return from Hassan. You really can't do anything at the moment. You've just got to hope that his knee gets better. Dion Waiters had 21 points with 7 assists and was inefficient, as is pretty much par for the course for Dion, while Jimmy Johnson had 14, 3 and 3, 2 threes, a steal and a block, and that's 2 strong games in a row for Jim. The Duke, Wayne Ellington, well, he played his minutes and remarkably did not score. Missed all 4 of his shots, which of course all 4 of those were from 3. 24 minutes for 0 points, but added 3 assists and 2 steals. Not something you really expect from Wayne Ellington all that much, but he does remain a preeminent 3-point streaming option. Justice Winslow started and played under 20 minutes for the second consecutive game, 2 of 10 from the field for 5 points, while Tyler Johnson went scoreless on 0 of 5 shooting. He is almost as inconsistent as they come. His shooting has been a real problem this season. On to the Cavs. LeBron got ejected for the first time in his NBA career. 21, 12, and 6 for LeBron. 5 steals, a block, and a 3. So still just a ludicrous performance, while Kevin Love erupted for 22 first quarter points. And unlike previous Kevin Love first quarter eruptions, he actually stacked on some more points. Finished with 38 and 9, 4 triples and 2 steals, and he has been very, very impressive lately. He got to the line 17 times and hit 14 of them in this one. Dwayne Wade was also good, 17, 5 and 4 in 28 minutes, and with Iman Shumpert out again with that knee issue, Wade's going to be pushed into a few extra minutes, and that's going to give him some okay-ish type of 12-team league value. It doesn't mean that he is a must-own guy or anything along those lines, but he has been better recently than what we saw from him to begin the season. Jeff Green in 27 minutes.
My name is Jeff.
Yeah, 6 and 4. Nothing really to see there. Kyle Korver hit his 3 triples, while the plumber J.R. Smith hit 2 threes in his 42 whopping minutes. Jose Calderon remained starting, played 17 minutes, but with Iman Shumpert out, he played 17 minutes. So the Cavs went with Wade. They went with LeBron at point guard for the majority of this game. Let's move on to the next game now. It's Phoenix and the Chicago Bulls. Devin Booker returned from his 1-game absence due to a sore toe. 33, 9 and 4 for Booker, 5 triples, a steal and a block, and he is a top 50 player this season. Has really taken his game to another level with increases in efficiency, and I don't really think it's going to stop too much, especially with Eric Bledsoe out of town. Well, TJ Warren triple one had 25 and 7 on 50% shooting in one of the more TJ Warren lines that you will ever see. They did make a change to their starting lineup, the Phoenix Suns. Dragan Bender.
Bite my shiny metal ass.
He moved into the starting lineup ahead of Greg Monroe.
As Greg runs in, we realise this could get dangerous.
Yeah, so Greg went from the starting power forward to a DNP-CD. I cannot work out anything that Triano does in terms of rotations. Alex Len went from a DNP-CD to the backup centre playing 30 minutes a night and getting 13 and 18. Now, I believe in Len. I do think he's a good player, but I can't put any trust in what Triano is going to do. Now, I do think that Len will remain in the rotation for at least the next couple of games. So if you've got a streaming spot, adding him might be worth looking at. But I have no confidence that A, he will play every night, or B, that he will play 30 minutes a night. Tyson Chandler saw just 18 minutes, and this realistically should be the way the minutes go. But again, absolutely zero confidence that Triano is going to do this. If you do own Munro, you hold for another game or two and you see, I guess, what goes on here. Bender had some early fouls. He was 0, 4 and 2. He'd need 32 minutes a night for me to be a 12-team league guy. He won't get that, so he's not a guy to add. He's a 16-team league sort of player, while Marquise Chris had 4 and 6 in 25 minutes. Amazingly, racked up one foul, but it's just not good. And yeah, I don't really see much point in holding on to him. Much like the Chicago Bulls, the point guard situation for Phoenix is going to fluctuate all the time. Ulis played 31 in this one after playing 20 in the last game, 14, 5 and 6, while Mike James had 5, 1 and 7 in 17 minutes after he went off in that last one. Majority of the time, it will be Ulis, but there's going to be some games where it's James. So Ulis is the guy that you want, but again, not a strong must-own player. But he's around. He's only owned in 9% of leagues. He can have 12-team league value, just don't expect it all the time. As for the Bulls, aside from Chrissy Dunn's big game, Justin Holiday had 25, 3 and 5 with 6 triples, 2 steals, and 3 blocks, and amazingly had 60% shooting from the field. Holiday's been really solid this season, putting up a remarkable level of shots. He shouldn't be doing that in any situation, but that's what's happening. His efficiency's been a real problem, and I think that will improve when Zach LaVine comes back at the end of next month. But I think that Holiday's minutes will drop off when that does happen. The Hammer, Denzel Valentine, played 39 minutes. Didn't score that well, but added 6 boards, 4 assists, and 3 steals, and he is a must-own guy, and I would own him over Holiday if I had to choose between the two. Lauri Markkanen just cannot hit shots at the moment. 4 of 15, but had 12, 6 and 4. Still want to own him. While Punch Bob Shipbloke, only 18 minutes for him, 9 and 4. See, the game didn't go into garbage time, so he just doesn't do anything. That is the story with Portis, not a 12-team league guy, pretty clearly. Robin Lopez had 10 and 7 in his 34 minutes. While Jaren Grant, after a big game in the last one, he had 6 points in 21 minutes. Again, just highlighting the bullshit that is the rotation of point guards for the Chicago Bulls. The next game we look at is the Washington Wizards and the Minnesota Timberwolves. With no Johnny Wall, Otto Porter is getting a larger chunk of the usage. A usage of over 30% in this one, 22 and 8 with 4 triples. If he sees his ranking jump up to top 15 over this time frame, I would sell him because his usage will likely drop back under 20% when Johnny returns. I've had this argument with Matt Smith plenty of times. He's a real big Tim Frazier guy. I'm a big Tomas Satoransky guy. I think that Satoransky's a better player than Frazier. But I didn't expect to see Frazier play just 16 minutes and Satoransky play 22 and look, I'm not surprised to see him look better. 7, 5 and 6 for Tomas, while 2, 1 and 4 for Frazier. I still believe that Scott Brooks will go back to Frazier as the starting point guard and play him more minutes. But this is what is not a shock to me because Tomas, I think, is a better player. In deeper leagues, you want to go and grab Tomas, and I still think that Frazier is worth a look in your standard leagues. Yamahimi played 26 minutes, so that meant that Markieff Morris played 20 and Marcin Gortat played 20. No one should be shocked at this. Gortat is a player who I don't think will remain standard league relevant all season. Well, I'm not looking to do too much with Mahimi, but his defense was pretty solid, while Kelly Oubre had 16, 4 and 2 in 31 minutes. And he's just on the periphery of 12-team leagues. He's more of a 14-team leaguer. For the Timberwolves, there was no Nemanja Bjelica and there was no Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
So Tyus Jones got another start and he played 40 minutes. 12, 4 and 7. People are really, really keen to go and grab him. But again, when Jeff Teague comes back, he will play 12 minutes, maybe. Maybe he'll play 12 minutes. Maybe he'll play 10 minutes. He's not going to cut into Jeff Teague's playing time. Now, Teague should be back. Now, Teague was warming up before this game. If he misses any more time, I'd say 1 game max. So while this is fantastic to get this value out of Jones here, it's just not going to be a long-term proposition. Of course, with all these players missing out, everyone played a shit ton of minutes. 20 and 17 for Karl Anthony Towns in 40 minutes. Jim Butler had 17, 7 and 10. And with Teague out, the shot distribution makes more sense. Butler's getting more of the ball. Towns is getting more of the ball. It makes more sense with Teague out because this is a rant I went on the other day. Teague just can't realize that maybe I shouldn't be taking more shots than the players that are considerably better than me. Set them up, hit your open threes, but none of this, I'm just going to run things bullshit, which really does frustrate me. Taj Gibson, 41 minutes for him, 16 and 11. He does have 12-team league value because he is just getting ridden into the ground, while Wigo had 13 points on 14 shots, but at least, 15 shots, sorry. But at least He did add 4 assists. Gorgie Jang, just give it up, guys. It's not happening. Every time that he plays 20 minutes, man, anything to see? Anything to see here? Gorgie, got to add him? No, you don't. 1 and 5 in 15 minutes. I like Gorgie Jang. It is literally just not happening unless Taj Gibson goes down and that, or Karl Anthony Towns goes down. It's not happening. Just don't fool yourself into believing that all of a sudden something big is going to come of Gorgie. The next game, the Utah Jazz just demolished the Denver Nuggets. This was a Nuggets team without Rocket Rodney Hood and Joe Johnson, while the Nuggets were missing Paulie Millsap and Wilson Chandler. The Nuggets sprung a bit of a surprise, starting Juancho Hernan-Gomez over Fart and Will Barton. Juancho in 28 minutes had 7 and 10, so he looked okay, while Barton in 31 minutes had 9 and 4. And just when I'd started to turn around and said, you know what, maybe I was wrong that Barton's not good, and he actually is good, well, he's been shithouse the last 2 games, so maybe I was right. Maybe I just was fooled by a short-term performance from Fart and Will Barton. He should still be owned, while Juancho is a deeper league player who I do like the dynasty potential of. Nikola Jokic, not a good night from him. Did have a 1-1 and 7, 6 and 6, but he can do better than that, while Gaz Harris, he had 18 points, which included 4 triples, but this was not a night to write home about for the Nuggets in any stretch. It was good to see the Blue Arrow Jamal Murray played 29 minutes. He had 10 points with 2 assists, while Ken Fareed started and played 23 minutes, had 11 and 8. So he went from DMP-CD to 30 minutes to 23 minutes, and trying to work out what his role is going to be on a nightly basis is tough. But he pretty much can't play unless he's playing alongside Jokic. So if he doesn't start, he probably won't be in the rotation at all. On to the Jazz side of things. With Rocket Rodney Hood out, Rick Rubio, Alec Burks, Derek Favors, Jonas Jerebko, they all took on a larger load of the scoring. Favors was fantastic, 24, 9 and 5 with a steal and 3 blocks in 33 minutes. Really abused the Nuggets, while Rick Rubio had 13, 4 and 5 with a steal and a block on 50% shooting, which is the sort of performance his owners would be okay with. Don Mitchell had 16, 3 and 2 with a pair of threes, while Jonas Jerebko 15 and 8 and 3 triples. I think that he continues to start as long as Gobert is out, and that makes him a 20-team league, maybe 18-team league sort of a player. It wasn't Jingle and Joe's best night, 5, 4 and 6, but he is absolutely a must-own player. On to the last game of the night, it was another pretty ugly blowout. The Milwaukee Bucks and the Sacramento Kings. Jason Kidd, he didn't know what he was going to do. No, am I going to start Gary Payton or am I going to start Tone Snell? Because it's really important to get the mitten out there for his playmaking. Come on, man. You've got Eric Bledsoe and Giannis out there. You do not need Gary Payton's playmaking, of which he is not very good at. And I need his defense out there. And Kidd's rationale is to start a shitful player in the starting lineup. Oh, well, you can't lose the game in the first 4 minutes. Huh? What? What kind of bullshit excuse is this? This guy is just ridiculous with some of the decisions. Look, they smashed the Kings, but fair enough. The Kings are shithouse. But the mental wankery that Kidd goes through to make the justification for these decisions makes no sense. Now, Tone Snell returned to the starting lineup, played 30 minutes and had 9, 2 and 2 with 2 triples. He remains Tone Snelly, deeper league sort of player. But again, as another part of the Kidd, I don't know, oeuvre of ridicularity, DeAndre Liggins came into the game before Malcolm Brogdon for defense, so he could shut down Garrett Temple, so he could shut down De'Aaron Fox. Like, what is the purpose of DeAndre Liggins playing more minutes than Malcolm Brogdon? Brogo played 20 minutes, had 9, 6, and 5. I just do not understand Kidd's logic at all. He is a shitful coach, and his decisions are completely maddening. Now, do you drop Brogdon in 10-team leagues? I think you have to consider it in that format. In 12s, I would still hold. This game was that much of a blowout, though, that Jason Terry played 23 minutes, so I can't really criticise Kidd too much for giving those minutes there. Chrissy Middleton played through his illness. Yanni and Bledsoe were both fantastic on supreme efficiency numbers, with they shared 8 steals between them. On to the Kings. Again, work this shit out if you can. George Hill played 30 minutes in the last game, under 20 in this one, and had a really piss-poor Richie Beno. 2 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 missed shots.
2 for 2.
I'll give him the sting anyway, though. De'Aaron Fox was not good, 24 minutes, 4, 1 and 2. And it was Frank Mason, again, that played the most minutes out of the point guards. 8, 2 and 7 for Frankie. He is a 20-team pickup, maybe an 18-team pickup. Bogdan played 20 minutes. Budrick Heald played 21 and scored 13 points. Garrett Temple had 18 in 5 minutes. And if there was not one Kings player owned in your 12-team league, I don't think that's an incorrect decision. That is how piss poor this squad is. Zebo, only 19 minutes, which is a better representation of what he should do. But in that case, Willie Cauley-Stein only played 24, still had a double-double. But this is the sort of inconsistency that does really restrict his overall upside. I think that Cauley-Stein should be owned in 12-team leagues. But there will be this sort of bullshit that goes on all the time with this roster. There is just confounding decision after confounding decision as everyone plays the same minutes and nothing's consistent and it just changes consistently. I don't think that you can really afford to stash De'Aaron Fox and even Skal Labissière, even though he had 11 and 6 in his 24 minutes here. I don't think that holding those guys in 12-team leagues is necessarily the best way of going about everything. That wraps it up for all of Tuesday's action. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to look at Wednesday's 10-game slate. Let's have a look at what song we're going to put on. Let's put on this song called This Is How It Should Be by Hot Potato Band, and then we'll be back to talk DFS action for Wednesday's games.
Summer has come, winter is long gone, the drinking's begun, night is rolling on. I wanna be right next to you, dancing all night long. I wanna spend the night with you till the daylight comes. Summer days, catching waves, music plays off. This is how it should be. On the sun, having fun, too much rum on.
Alright guys, let's take a look at the perfect DFS lineups for Tuesday on FanDuel. It was Chrissy Dunn with 51.8 and Eric Bledsoe with 43.5. Justin Holiday 50.1 and Devin Booker 52.8. LeBronald had 60.4.
LeBron James.
Juancho Hernangomez had 22, while Derek Favors had 53.3 and Jonas Jerebko had 30.6, rounding it out with Kevin Love at 54.8 for a total of 419.3, and that cost $59,700. On DraftKings, Dunn had 51, Booker 55.25, Holiday 48.75, Favors 50.25, Len 37.5, Butler at 45.25, Jonas Jerebko at 31.5, and Kevin Love at 56.75 for a grand total of 376.25, and that cost $49,100 dues. Let's look at this DFS slate for Wednesday, the busiest day of the week. We have got 10 games on. The first one of those features the Phoenix Suns. They're traveling to Detroit on a back-to-back. The Pistons are favored by 12, and the total is 218 points. The tackle box, John Lua, I don't think that he is going to play in this one, so his backup minutes will go to Eric Moreland, but that's not really a DFS type of situation. At point guard, you've got Reg Jackson at 5,800. A really good matchup here for Jackson. I like using him in tournaments and cash, whereas Ish Smith at 3,800. Revenge game for Ish Smith? You could have a look at him at 3,800, but that would be a GPP type of play only, as would Tyler Ulis at 4,300. A decent performance from him today, but as we've mentioned, his minutes could fluctuate depending on whatever side of the bed Triano wakes up on. And if I'm going to spend up on a Phoenix, or not spend up, if I'm going to spend anything on a Phoenix point guard, it'll be the guy who's got a greater than 50% chance of getting more minutes. Ulis is 43. Mike James is at 4,400. At shooting guard, Avery Bradley is down to 5,300 now. That is a very, very tasty price for Braddles. I would use him at that sort of a salary. Hasn't been sensational, but he just needs 25 points, which I think he can do against the Phoenix Suns. As for Devin Booker, 6,900 for Book.
Giggity.
Yeah, love that here against Detroit. I know Detroit's been pretty good, but that is a really good price for Devin Booker, a guy who's going to shoulder a large portion of the load. At small forward, Stan Johnson is at $4,000. Not interested in that. TJ Warren at 73. Am interested in that one, so I'd definitely be looking at TJ at 7,300. Joshy Jackson, no thank you. At power forward, Toby Harris, 6,700. I like his ability in cash against this Phoenix team, so that's a good one. Dragon Bender at 3,500. You could throw him in a GPP, but I don't feel great about his ability to rack up fantasy stats, while Marquise Chris and Tone Tolliver, no. Weirdly enough, Jared Dudley was a DNP CD along with Greggy Munro for the Suns today. Not sure that will be a consistent, but it's probably worth steering clear there. Andre Drummond, 9,400, has been killing it. I don't really see the Suns being able to slow him down, so I do like him in this matchup. Tyson Chandler at 47 is not someone I'm all that keen on. Well, Alex Len at 47? Yeah, sure. Let's get Alex Len in, especially for tournaments, but I wouldn't be expecting the massive game that he had today, unfortunately, because I do think that he is a relatively talented player. Over on DraftKings, for tournaments, I like Drummond at 92, I like Ulis at 43, Len at 45, and Booker at 77. And for cash, it's TJ Warren at 71 and Toby Harris at 65. A significant discrepancy between the pricing of Booker on DraftKings and FanDuel, and that's why I like Booker for cash on FanDuel and just as a GPP guy over on DraftKings. All right, let's move on to the next game. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Orlando Magic. The Thunder are favored by 6, and the total is 212.5 points here. At point guard, we've got Lord Alfred Payton, 7,300. Not the matchup that I want to be using him out there. While Russ at 11,000. Totally in on Russ. He's back in business. He has eviscerated the Magic in the past. His last 3 games against them have averaged 80 FanDuel points. Averaged. So yeah, at $11,000, I am in on Russ here. Augustine and Felton, no, not really. At shooting guard, Andre Robertson, no. Terry Ross at 4,700. Only played 25 minutes, but dropped 22 points in that last game, but that is not a high prospect situation. Terry Ferguson, Aaron Aflalo, Alex Abrines, no way. At small forward, Fournier's at 5,200. The price isn't coming down fast enough for me, so I'll pass on him. While John Simmons at 4,600. Now, I'm not a massive fan of John Simmons, but at 4,600 in a 30-plus minute role, I'm in on using him in this matchup, while Paulie George at 8,600. Did miss practice, but he is fine. He is ready to play. 8,600, 40 points for Paul George. It's a possibility. I might lean more towards tournaments. At power forward, Mello at 62. Yep, I'm all in on Mello at 62. I think he's got 30 points pretty much locked up here. Or As Gordon at 77. I don't think this is the greatest situation for me to use him. At center, Steve-O Adams, 5,600. Has been a little bit up and down recently, but that's a really solid price drop, and that does really vault him into calculations as a GPP center and maybe even a cash guy. Vooch is at 8,200, and I just don't like the matchup for Vooch here, so that's a fade. Mo Spates, with John Isaac out, I think you can consider him a tournament guy, but I really don't like the matchup for him either. Let's have a look on DraftKings tournament. It's really As Gordon at 7,000, who's much cheaper on DraftKings. And then for cash, I like Lord Alfred at 5,900, just a significant price difference. Johnny Simmons at 45 and Russ at 11,200. Also a nice play over on DraftKings. Let's move on now to the next one. We've got the Washington Wizards and the Philadelphia 76ers. Ben Simmons is officially listed as questionable after spraining his ankle in the last game, so it doesn't appear to be too serious. If he is out, Timothy John McConnell will be the guy that gets the boost, and you can have a look at someone like Jared Bayless as maybe a GPP play, and Dario Saric also becomes more solid for cash. At point guard, Bayless is 3,700, as I mentioned. He'd be a tournament look. Timmy Frazier at 4,900, was horrendous today with 9 points in 16 minutes. At 4,900, you could look at him as a GPP guy, but I wouldn't be feeling super strong about deploying him. Satoransky, 3,500, maybe. On a 10-game slate, though, there's just a lot of uncertainty there with Satoransky. And McConnell's at 6,400, which even if Simmons is out, is pretty expensive. So I would look at him, but I wouldn't be absolutely locking him in as one of my core players. At shooting guard, Braddles Beal, 8,300. It wasn't Braddles' best game here, but I do believe that he's a cash play against Philly. He's coming off a back-to-back, but I think he'll be okay. Well, JJ Redick at 5,700 is probably just a little bit too high. At small forward, Bob Cov's at 6,200. He did find out, I think it was his cousin that had been murdered before the last game, so that's obviously shithouse for him. So, that sort of explains some of that poor shooting. I like him as a GPP guy, as his price has fallen $500 since then. Otto Porter at 7,300 I really like for cash and tournaments, while 43 for Kelly Oubre is a GPP option. At power forward, you've got Markieff Morris at 53, no way. Benny Simmons at 10-1. I don't mind that for cash. If we hear that he plays, obviously we need to hear that he plays first. Well, Šarić at 5,700 is in play if Simmons is out. At centre, Embiid at 9,900. Yeah, totally in on Embiid here. Gortat at 49. I think he's a tournament player. I think he can do okay against Embiid and should be able to hold up. Not too bad, while Mahinmi not really going to be too much of a DFS option. Over on DraftKings tournament, guys abound here. Satoransky at 31, Šarić at 5,000, McConnell at 46, Bob Cove at 62, and Embiid at 98. Whereas for cash, I really do like Otto Porter at 6,700 in this matchup against the Philadelphia 76ers. The next game up is the Charlotte Hornets and the Toronto Raptors. The Raptors are favoured by 8 and the total is 206. Kemba Walker is doubtful with the shoulder injury, while CJ Miles should be back from his personal leave after the birth of his child, so he should be back, and that will limit what Norm Powell can do. With Kemba Walker likely out, we're going to see Michael Carter-Williams most likely starting at 5,200. His ability to rebound, get assists, and get steals makes him a solid play. Now, it's a terrible matchup for point guards, and Carter-Williams is hardly the most consistent player. So I wouldn't be locking him into cash, but I would have a decent level of confidence, and he has got 35 point upside here. Freddie VanVleet at 3,800. With Miles coming back, it does take the top off the value for VanVleet, so not really keen. While Kyle Lowry at 8,200, I think that 40 should be considered almost a floor value for Lowry, so I think it's a pretty good matchup for him. At shooting guard, Nick Batum down to 5,800, which is very appealing, but I would only look at him as a tournament guy, while DeMar DeRozan is dealing with a knee bruise. Now, his price has plummeted down to 7,100. And if we hear that he is ready to play, I love that for cash, and I love it for tournaments at that sort of a salary. Jez Lamb at 6,300, probably a little bit too high for me, just given the fact that Batum's around, while Norman Powell at 4,600. Good game in the last one for Norm. He had 28 points in that one, but with Miles coming back, that's probably 4 or 5 minutes that come off Powell's playing time, and he won't get to that level. Malik Monk should also enter the rotation at $3,500. With Kemba out, I don't really see much, though, to like with Monk. But, of course, if he outplays Carter-Williams, he could have 25 minutes. He could drop 6 or 7 threes in an ideal world, and that makes him a GPP opportunist. At small forward, Kid Gilchrist at 5,100. He's not really going to start providing tons of offense. CJ Miles at 38 is a GPP guy, while the Jedi, OG Anunoby at 3,500. 21 points in 17 minutes in his last start is okay, but I don't see the floor. I don't see the high ceiling. At power forward, Pascal Siakam at 5,200 played more minutes than Serge Ibaka and Jonas Valanciunas in the last game and dropped 32 points. I don't feel confident that will happen all the time, so it is hard to use him in cash, but it's a decent matchup for Pascal. And I think you can look at him as a 30-point GPP upside. Marv Williams, Serge Ibaka, I just don't like either of those guys, really. While Frank the Tank at 3,600, that is worth a look for a tournament. Frank can very easily drop 30 points, and at 3,600, that would be useful. At centre, love Dwight Howard here, 7,200, 50-point upside, I believe, for Dwight. Really do like him at that price, whereas Valanciunas at 4,400, not going to get too excited about him. He had 25 in 20 minutes in the last game, but I don't feel that that's necessarily a replicable thing, especially against Dwight. You got Cody Zeller, Jakob Poeltl, and Bebe out there too. None of those guys really do much to tickle my fancy. Over on DraftKings tournament options, Jez Lamb at 55, Freddles VanVleet at 34, Marv Williams at 37, Kid Gilchrist at 4,000, and Carter Williams at 42, although that probably pushes into more cash territory at 4,200 for Carter Williams. And for the cash guys, Siakam's at 38, love him at 3,800, Dwighty Howard at 71, and Kyle Lowry at 7,800 are all cash options over on DraftKings. All right, let's move on to the next game. We are looking at the Miami Heat and the New York Knicks. The Heat on a back-to-back as well, and they are favoured by 1 with a total of 201 points. Enes Kanter is likely back. He missed the last 2 games with back spasms. That's going to push Koch down to the backup role, and Bill Hernangomez likely out of the rotation. At point guard, the Iron Shoulder, Goran Dragic, 6,900. It was not his best night. I'm okay with him bouncing back here. It's a good matchup. He's got 40-point upside, so I don't mind him at 6,900. Not a core play, but definitely has some value. Frankie Ntilikina at 35, no. Jarrett Jack, no. Ramon Sessions, no. While Tyler Johnson at 4,800. Tournament upside with 30-point upside there, but not a cash play. Timmy Hardaway, 6,100, hasn't quite been at the level he needs to be recently, but I think he is worth a look as a tournament. And if you are struggling for a shooting guard, for cash, he does have something there. While Dion Wade is at 6,000, I would much rather take Tim at $100 more. The Duke at 3,500, Wayne Ellington, he is always a GPP guy for those 20-point, 7 3-pointer outbursts, which we know that he can do. At small forward, Joshy Richardson at 43, good to see him get back in business, but it was only 21 points today, so I'm not feeling overly strongly about him, while Courtney Lee at 5,100, just an absolute cash lock sort of a player. Winslow, Lance Thomas, Doug McDirt, nah. At power forward, Kristaps Porzingis. He's at 8,900. He is more of a tournament guy. He hasn't really been getting to that 40-point level all that often. It's not a great matchup. The back-to-back part might help him. I think he's more of a 35 than a 40-point guy, which isn't quite where he needs to be, but he has got that tournament upside clearly. Jim Johnson at 5,800, also a tournament type of a player. At centre, Enes Kanter at 6,400. Should be ready to go, but I'm a little bit concerned just about the minutes given his back problem, so I'd probably fade him here, while Kylo Quinn and Hassan Whiteside, I don't really see the value in either of those guys. Whiteside was good today. Look, 36 points in 19 minutes is bloody fantastic. But I don't think you can be relying upon 2 fantasy points per minute for Hassan Whiteside. If his minutes are going to be limited, then he's not going to return that $8,400 worth of value that you'd need to spend to get him into one of your lineups. Over on DraftKings for tournaments, it's the Duke at 3,900 and Tyler Johnson at 43. And for cash, we've got Kanter at 58, Porzingis at 82, and Courtney Lee at 4,800. Let's move on to the next game. It's the Indiana Pacers against the Houston Rockets. Victor Oladipo has reappeared on the injury report after playing in the last game with that knee bruise, so that's one to watch, while Nene is questionable with a strained right shoulder. If Vic is out, then Lance Stevenson becomes the guy that you want to use. If Nene is out, well, it just boosts up the value of Clint Capella. At point guard, Chrissy Paul's at 8,700, probably still a little bit too high for Paul. I love what he's been doing with his assists, but the scoring's not quite there to justify that level of a price tag. Corey Joseph at 39, you'd throw into a GPP if Victor happens to be out. Daz Collison, 6,400, has not been living up to that sort of a price tag, so I'd probably leave him out of it. At shooting guard, Eric Gordon at 48, no way. Jim Harden at 12, and that's a very, very expensive price for Jim. I don't think that you can use him in cash, and not that I don't think that he's good, but at 12,200, the other level of players you have to put in around him in a cash lineup, they have less certainty. So it's probably better to take one of those other guys like Russ Westbrook at 11,000, and you get that extra 1,000 to play around with in other spots, and that gives you a little bit more cash certainty. So I think Harden is more of a GPP guy here. Oladipo at 8,400. He has been killing it, averaging 47 across his last 5. If he is ready to go, I would look at him, but I'd probably go more tournaments. Bojan at 4,500 is a tournament player, while Trev Ariza at 52. I don't really see the upside there or the floor, so that's a no from me. Lance, 38 points in the last game in 24 minutes, which is a fantastic return. He's at 5,200. I would look at him more, though, as a tournament guy. At power forward, Sabonis at 6,200. With the uncertainty with how the minutes are going to go, he's probably going to get 24 or 25. I don't feel like 6,200 is a good price, so I would fade that. Thaddeus Young at 6,000, not looking strong to me, while Ryan Anderson, no interest. At centre, Miles Turner, 7,000. I like him for a tournament. It's a decent matchup for him. He's done well against Capella in the past, but I don't feel confident about the floor. As for Capella, 7,600. Love this matchup. Opposition centres have done really well against Miles Turner so far this season, so I like Capella even more so if Nene happens to be out. Let's look over on DraftKings tournaments. It's Lance at 43, Bojan at 47, and Corey Joseph at 35, while Jim Harden comes in as a cash play at 11,600 over on DraftKings. Let's move on to the next one. It is the Minnesota Timberwolves on a back-to-back, taking on the New Orleans Pelicans. The Pels are favoured by 5, and the total is 218 points here. The player we need to watch out for, of course, is Jeff Teague.
My name is Jeff.
And to a lesser degree, Nemanja Bjelica. If Teague is out, Tyus Jones is going to get every single minute under the sun, and he's only at 5,300, so he would be an absolute lock if Teague is out. As for Bjelica, that really strengthens Taj Gibson's value, and he is really cheap too. So they are players to watch, but with the way the Timberwolves run things, I wouldn't expect information very early in the day. At point guard, Rajon Rondo's at 4,800. I'm going to say that's no. He's been bad, and the minutes haven't been there for him either due to the recovery from the injury. As for Teague, 7,300, I wouldn't be looking at him in this matchup coming back from an Achilles if he does happen to play. Jameer Nelson, no way. At shooting guard, Drew Holiday, 6,800. I like Drew here. I think he's a 40-point guy waiting to happen. Really good matchup for him. I think this is a good spot to use Holiday. Eats one more at 4,000. Not really. We go 6,800, probably a little bit higher. 6,100 Andrew Wiggins is one that I can get behind. 6,800 on a 10-game slate, not happening. Small forward Darius Miller, 3,700. There is some tournament upside there, but I don't think it's all that high, so probably not the greatest way to spend that money. While Jim Butler at 8,600 is probably just a little bit too high, especially with the unknown status of Jeff Teague. Bielitsa's at 35, Cunningham's at 35, Tone Allen's at 35, and I don't think that any of those guys are going to be really useful DFS guys. At power forward, Tone Davis at 10.8, in on that, 50 plus, should be almost a lock for Tone. And you've got Taj at 5,100, love that as well. That is, I feel like he's a lock for 30 almost every time he goes out there, which is great value at that price tag. At centre, Boogie's at 10.9, so I love him at that salary. Now, Karl Anthony Towns comes in at 9,500. If Jeff Teague's out, I would lean a little bit more towards Townsy. Otherwise, the Boogie Cousins foul problem could be a real issue for Towns, and he has struggled against Boog in the past, and that would give me room to pause in terms of rostering him. Over on DraftKings, there's a bunch of cash guys that I like. Butler at 74, Boog at 11,000, Townsy at 87. I'd even be inclined to use him in cash at 87. Drew's at 65, Tone Davis at 10.8, and Taj at 5.9 is still a cash option over on DraftKings. Let's move on now to the next game. It's the Brooklyn Nets and the Dallas Mavericks. For Brooklyn, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson is doubtful. The blue swimmer, Alan Crabb, is doubtful, while we're expecting to get Damari Carroll back after he missed the last game due to illness. So there's going to be some opportunities for numerous players here for the Nets. At point guard, Spencer Dinwiddie is at $7,000. Hasn't quite been living up to that level, but I feel like in this matchup, it's a decently positive one. I feel like at 7,000 with the other injuries as well, he is worth looking at, and that price has dropped by $500. Dennis Smith at 5,800 is a really good GPP play, but I don't feel good about him for cash. Isaiah Whitehead, look, a big game from him in the last one. He's at 3,800. Sure, if you want to look at him in a tournament, go ahead, but I wouldn't be feeling super excited about using him. At shooting guard, the sexy boy, Sean Kilpatrick. Now, I saw someone before this episode just tweet me, where does the music for sexy boy Sean Kilpatrick come from? Come on, man. It's Shawn Michaels of the WWF/WWE. He was the sexy boy, and it's his theme song. It's one of the greatest WWE WWE entrance songs that ever existed. Amazingly, I used 3 WWE entrance songs on this show. We've got The Undertaker, we've got Ravishing Rick Rude, and we've got Sexy Boy Shawn Michaels. So that's where that comes from. Now, Kilpatrick, with these injuries, he should be worth a look. He had 21 points in the last game at 3,600. He does have some upside for tournaments. Levert at 48, I also like as a 30-point upside sort of player with the blue swimmer unlikely to go. Wes Matthews is at 5,000. Not really feeling too much there. Well, JJ Barea at 47. He had 39 in the last game. He's got that ability to score, to get threes, to have assists, and to get steals, and I like that GPP upside. For the small forwards, Jumpin' Joe Harris is at 4,000. In on that, cash, tournaments, sure. While the pencil Harrison Barnes is a great cash play at 6,500. Damari Carroll also with these injuries at 5,800. I like him for cash also. At power forward, Trevor Booker will likely get another start. He's at 4,900. I think he's a tournament guy more than a reliable cash play. While Dirk at 5,300, I feel like Dirk is pretty much a really good cash play against the Nets given the way that he has been playing. Maxi Kleber, Quincy Acey, Dwighty Powell. If I'm going to look at one of those guys, I might look at Acey, but don't feel strongly about any of them. At centre, Jarrett Allen's at 35, Tyler Zeller's at 36. And if I'm going to take a punt on one of those, it's probably going to be Zeller because I feel more confident about the minutes that he's going to get, and he could be a 20-point guy, which is not bad, but definitely not someone that you want to start your lineups with. On DraftKings tournaments, I like the sexy boy at 3,600, and for cash, it's Jumpin' Joe Harris at 43, the pencil Harrison Barnes at 61, and Dennis the Woodslanger Smith at 5,600 is a cash option over on DraftKings. 2 more games to go to wrap up this 10-game Wednesday slate. The first one is Memphis versus San Antonio. The Spurs are favoured by 8 and the total is 195.5. Rudy Gay is probable after missing the last game due to his sore right heel, while Tone Parker will be limited to about 15 minutes. This is obviously going to be Memphis's first game without Dave Fizdale. Chandler Parsons is probable, while Mario Chalmers is questionable with an ankle. Now, if Chalmers is out, it's more playmaking going to Tyreek Evans, but more minutes for Andy Harrison, and that shouldn't get you any level of excited whatsoever because he is really quite shitful. At point guard, Pat Mills, 4,500. I don't really see much to get excited about with Millsy there. I wouldn't be using Tone Parker, whereas Chalmers at 6,900 with a bum ankle, that is way too high for Mario, so that's a no from me. DeJounte Murray at 3,700, yeah, it's also a no. At shooting guard, Dan Green, this is a shitful DFS game, by the way. Dan Green at 49, this is the anti-stack. Manu at 35, nah. I'd look at Tyreek at 7,500 if Chalmers happens to be out, but that is quite a significant price to pay for Tyreek Evans. Benny McLemore at 3,500, Brynny Forbes, nah. Small forwards, Brooksy, Dylan Brooks, 4,700, continues to be priced way too high. I have no interest in Dylan there, while Kyle Anderson is up to 6,100, but he's almost just churning out 30 points every game, and I don't mind him for cash in this one. Rudy Gay at 49, no way. Chandler Parsons at 46 is too high given his limited minutes. At power forward, LaMarcus Aldridge is expensive. He's at 8,700, but he's clearly got 50-point upside, so I like him as a tournament option against this Memphis team, while JaMychal Green at 6,000 is just way too expensive. I wouldn't want any piece of that. Marcus Gasol, does he come out breathing fire after this news about Fizdale? He's at $9,000. Spurs have been a team that opposition centres have been able to put up big numbers against, so that's interesting. That's really going against the general knowledge you have against the Spurs. He's a $9,000 player. I would only look at him as a tournament play. Powell, his brother, clearly, 6,600 for Powell, probably just a little bit too high there, but I'd be more inclined to go with Powell and save my money up for someone like Russ Westbrook. Deontay Davis will be the backup with Brandon Wright out again, 3,500 for Deontay. Absolutely got 25-point upside, and that makes him a GPP guy in one of your many lineups. On DraftKings, only a few guys I really like. Tyreek at 66, Aldridge at 81, and Kyle Anderson at 53. They can all be used for tournaments and for cash games. The last game of the night is the Golden State Warriors and the Los Angeles Lakers. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry are both questionable. If Durant is out, Caspi becomes a GPP guy. If Curry is out, Pat McCaw, will he get another start, or will they go back to Sean Livingston? So this situation is just one to avoid for cash from the Warriors side of things, but you can have a look at, say, Clay, McCaw, Caspi in your different tournament lineups. But it really depends on the status of these two guys. I wouldn't be using Durant. I wouldn't be using Curry, because even if they play, it could be a blowout and they play 28, 29 minutes. If I had to guess, I would say Curry plays and Durant doesn't, but that is 100% a guess. Lonzo Ball, 6,700. The price has dropped for Lonzo. I think he's definitely worth a GPP look with his ability to fill it up in other categories. And then you got Steph at 98. That's not something I'm all that keen on. At shooting guard, Jordy Clarkson, 5,000. Yep, I think that's fine for cash. I think it's fine for tournaments. While Clay at 7,200 definitely gets that boost if both Durant and Curry are out. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope has been crushing it, so that's almost the indication that he will be shithouse in this next game. 6,200 for Clay. I don't mind it for cash, but I do lean more towards GPPs for him. At small forward, Brando Ingram, 6,100. Foul trouble for him in the last game. I feel alright about him as a tournament player, but no cash reliability. Iguodala, Durant, Caspi. Or Caspi I'd throw into a tournament, but that's about it. At power forward, Larry Nance at 4,900. I feel pretty good about that, actually, for Nancy. Get his 25 minutes, 25 points. Should be a decent cash play. Randall, Kuzma, future MVP. Draymond Green. Don't really love any of them. If I'm going to use one, it will be Kuzma in a GPP or Draymond in a GPP, depending on the status of Curry and Durant. And at center, it's Brookie Lopez, no way. Zaza and JaVale, also no way. Over on DraftKings, I like Lonzo as a tournament play at 68, and then on cash, it's Brando Ingram at 6,000 and Jordy Clarkson at 4,800. Let's flip it over to have a look at some plays on Yahoo. For GPPs, I like DeMar DeRozan. I like Trev Booker, Markieff Morris, Larry Nance, Jermichael Green, Bojan Bogdanovic, Timmy Frazier, Norm Powell, the Duke, Wayne Ellington. They're probably my GPP options. If we're looking at cash picks, it's Lance Stevenson, Tyson Chandler, Tyler Johnson, Marv Williams, Sexy Boy, Sean Kilpatrick, John Simmons, Jumpin' Joe Harris, Dirk, Levert, Pascal Siakam, MCW, Lowry, Butler, Aldridge, and Andre Drummond. On Moneyball for tournaments, we've got Porzingis, we've got Butler, we have got Ingram, Damari, Carroll, that is, Trevor Booker, Avery Bradley, Pascal Siakam, Karis Levert, Bojan Bogdanovic. And then for cash plays, we have got Sexy Boy, Sean Kilpatrick, John Simmons, Jumpin' Joe Harris, Michael Carter Williams, Reggie Jackson, Otto Porter, Drew Holiday, The Iron Shoulder, The Pencil, Bradley Beal, LaMarcus Aldridge, Drummond, Embiid, Tone Davis, and Boog. And on Draft Stars, let's go with some GPP options. Bob Cobb, Trevor Booker, Jermichael Green, Karis Levert, Bojan Bogdanovic, Pat Mills, Tyler Ulis. And that's it for the GPP type options. For cash, we've got Timmy Frazier, although I'd move that more to GPP now. Darius Miller is worth a look. John Simmons, Sean Kilpatrick, Pascal Siakam, Jumpin' Joe Harris, MCW, Avery Bradley, Reggie Jackson, TJ Warren, The Pencil, Spencer Dinwiddie, Joel Embiid, and Boog Cousins. And you could probably throw Jim Harden in there as well. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts and give it a 5-star review. Also, you can find it on Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, and now Spotify, and of course on YouTube, where you can give it a thumbs up and a subscription and leave a comment in the comments below, and check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Tobias Harris.